in Germany. She ran 10 kilometres on the road and ran the fastest time in the world this year. Now, one or two people suggesting that actually she would have been in pretty good shape for an Olympic marathon, and that she was really perhaps just keeping her powder dry for this race today, and felt this was more important, perhaps a bigger payday potential than the Olympic marathon.
Just looking in the centre there in the red vest, Haile Gebrselassie of Ethiopia. Certainly one who many would suggest might well challenge for this marathon race. He also deep in concentration there. Kiprop alongside her, just off her left shoulder, just now a little bit behind there. And the race for them beginning to Deriba is there as well. Actually, there's a very, very good spread of top-class African runners there for Mikitenko to contend with.
Exactly right. I think Mikitenko's going to have her hands full today. No Getawami, of course, the champion from last year, who went on just 5 weeks later to win in New York. But one of those Africans will cause a shock or a surprise, I'm sure. Here's that lead group. Look at the crowds out in the streets of Berlin. Huge crowds, less than 20 minutes on the clock. Gebrselassie with 6 men around him, 2 of them in theory racing against him, but the likelihood very much that he will be on his own come the latter stages of the event.
You mentioned earlier on, Tim, the prize money. It's 50,000 euros for a win here, but also there are sub prizes as well, and I use the word sub deliberately because the first athlete sub 2:06 gets 30,000 euros, and if there are 2 athletes under 2:730 they get 15,000 euros. So there are all sorts of little incentives along the road. That's for the men, and the first woman under 2:21:30 gets 30,000. Now that's a tough ask. In fact, that's a pretty tough ask indeed. And whilst we look at just this array of Africa, there are 107 countries involved in this marathon this morning. So the world has come to Berlin, but at the moment, Africa holding the stage.
As ever, really, in the world of distance running nowadays, the Africans, the East Africans in particular, do dominate. They're another of those leading women. I think that's we saw Chariot there. There's Kiprop as well. Francis Kiprop.
I think that's Helena Kiprop, actually.
Helena says, as in the female version of the name. What I'm fascinated as this tougher athlete to the left there. I've not seen her before, Stuart, but she's got a wonderful stride, very powerful, bouncing stride. It's not a fluent style of running, but it takes great strength to have a long loping stride like she's got.
Yeah, we saw her in Osaka last year. She was 22nd in 2:38:01, so just to give you some idea. In April this year she was 5th in the Boston Marathon at 2:29:48, just to give you a time on that. And she's been in the Berlin Marathon before. She was 3rd in 2005, incidentally, at 2:28:27. So she knows the course, she knows this area and the atmosphere of this marathon. But you can see how flat it is. It's a wonderfully flat course, and it's so well protected by those trees and by buildings as they wend their way around the outskirts of Berlin. She's run a lot of marathons, incidentally, over the years. The first major one she ran was in, 2005. So just to give you a little bit of background, because many were saying that Tafa Magasa might well be the one to threaten. But this is the leading pack, and Gebrselassie remains in the centre. But I think the important thing, Tim, as you will no doubt support, is that we're looking to see what happens at 10k, because 5k was just a little bit quick. It was 10 seconds quicker than the world record pace. So we'll see. It looks very easy, but then of course things can change later on.
Yes, and I think if you go too fast through the first 5 kilometres, while it's not a good thing, you can at least adjust things in the second 5 kilometres up to 10k and sort of regather your resources. But if you compound the error by a second 5 kilometre segment that's too quick, that's over fast, then you really do start getting deeper and deeper into the mire, and it takes a lot to get yourself out of it. So let's hope that they have adjusted the pace here through this next 3 mile or 5 kilometre segment. Fabulous crowds here. I think the publicity that has been accrued over the years, don't let's forget that Ronaldo da Costa set the world record here back in 1999, the Brazilian, 2:6:05 he ran, and then Paul Toga 5 years ago running 2:4:55, the first man to go under 2:05, and then last year Haile Gebrselassie, and that's just the men's world records. But the history behind this race, the recent history behind this race, is such that the locals cannot but support the race. Some cities, I have to say, the inhabitants can be a little bit guilty of almost regarding the local marathon as a bit of a nuisance. Paris, for example, in many respects doesn't have particularly good crowds. You won't see anything like these scenes in Paris apart from 1 or 2 select points, but in Berlin they come out in their hundreds of thousands and roar these athletes on.
Well, you know, James Kwambai is still up with that leading group, and you're talking about an athlete who has a best of 2 hours 10.2. So, you know, this is way beyond what he's achieved before. Charles Kamarthi is there as well. The pacemakers are obvious for you to see. Wearing the number 2 is Kamarthi. Number 10 is James Kwambai. So those are the 2 athletes who have dared to go with this leading pace group, and they're way faster than they've ever run before.
And interestingly, Stuart, one of the pacemakers there alongside Gebrselassie has on the back of his vest, on the bib on his back of his vest, says 62:30 pace. Well, they're going much quicker than that at the moment, much too quick. They're going at something like 61:30 pace, which is what Gebrselassie did in Dubai. It's making the same mistake. Let's hope they do make that adjustment. As we see Mikitenko now, part of a big group. Some of those male athletes will be gathered around her as official pacemakers, others will just be latching on to the German. Perhaps to get themselves on TV, but perhaps also because they know she'll be moving at around 2:24 pace. Now, interestingly, she is in the second group, the chasing group, in the women's race. These are the leaders.
Yes, indeed, they are. There's Rose Cherry up there. Asgali Tafa Magarsa is there. Helena Kiprop is there.